Good evening and thank you for joining us for another episode of Business PNG. Following the eventful past couple of weeks, which culminated in the resignation of former Prime Minister Peter O'Neill and the successful nomination of current Prime Minister James Marape, Papua New Guinea is eager to see where the new Prime Minister and his government will be leading the country. After a rather eventful past couple of weeks, which culminated in the resignation of the country's former Prime Minister, Peter O'Neill, and the appointment of new Prime Minister James Marape, the proverbial question being asked is where to now?
Let us start this journey.
Addressing Parliament in his first speech as Prime Minister, Prime Minister Marape outlined his aspirations for the country moving forward.
And so today I stand before this nation and this honorable house, humbled, but also burdened, knowing that the challenge before us as a nation is not easy. I've been finance minister 7 years. I know that our economy is bleeding and struggling. We will do a diagnostic into how our economy is right now, one of the first business of our government. After we've assembled a team of ministers in the coalition we have, we will do a holistic diagnostic about the status of our economy. The team of leaders I lead, encouraged by some of the encouragements that I've received in Laguna, mingling with members on the other side, are all about doing what is right for our nation, taking back our economy, looking into resource laws. At the moment, our resource laws are outdated. When we talk about autonomy to our provincial governments, we must go beyond just transfer functions, but ability to raise revenues at their levels also. Mr. Speaker. So we will look closer, not only in the oil and gas sector and in the mining sector, which some of us are predominantly passionate about, but the greater propensity and potential of our country in all range of economic blessings this country is blessed with.
He alluded to the new coalition government's plans to empower Papua New Guinean businesses and honing in on maximizing gains from the country's natural resources.
We do not intend to chase our investors. They are here to stay. We encourage them. But we will look into maximizing gain from what God has given this country, from our natural resources. This leadership is all about placing this country in the right place in taking back our economy. Our forestry. We don't need no more foreigners to come in and export our forestry sector. Yes. Those players currently playing in this country, your time is now to go into downstream and not run-log export. We are all about maximizing resources for our country. Fishing sector, for instance. Provincial government must get involved in this sort of industries, in this sort of space. Who says one conglomerate from outside will come and tell me I can't change law for my country? I have every right to tweak and turn resource laws for my country that will empower my citizens as well.
While his aspirations of transforming Papua New Guinea into the richest black Christian nation in the world may seem like a stretch to some, Executive Director of think tank Institute of National Affairs says that it's good to have aspirations of the country you want and to work towards it. However, the priority should now be on housekeeping and restoring the economy.
Well, certainly it's a big aspiration, but of course it's not that dissimilar to the aspiration that's already in the Vision 2050. And as you say, it's good to have aspirations, and then you have the real practicalities on the ground. And the practicalities on the ground are that PNG is a purportedly resource-rich country, but as we know, it has some of the worst social indicators in the Asia-Pacific region, and those include high child maternal mortality rates, poor education standards, although numbers in the schools have improved somewhat over recent years, but certainly big challenges there. And as we know, high TB rates, a wide range of disease rates, and a lot of issues that relate to lack of formal sector jobs, but also limited informal sector employment opportunities. So we've also seen over the course of time, it seems like a lot of the despite a major commitment for rolling out small to medium enterprises in the SME policy, 500,000 in a certain number of years, I think by 2020, nevertheless, we actually are seeing quite a lot of overseas micro businesses establishing, and PNG businesses almost appearing to be being squeezed out rather than being expanding. So the government's got a lot of challenges. Those are very real challenges. They can't be fixed overnight. They do need sustainability, as I say, when it comes to just the economic management. They've got to grow the economy. Growing the economy will generate more jobs. It will also generate more revenue, income, and that therefore revenue, which can then be shared with the state as well. The state can then perform its functions better without having to be borrowing, getting the money direct from taxations without having to borrow. It then has to make sure that it's spending the money in a wise manner on real priorities and not wasting it through bad procurement, untendered procurement, or on wasteful or unnecessary projects, focusing on the things that people need. And it's really good to see some of the provincial governments, some of the administrators, and really focusing on some practical issues in some of their provinces. And they're a little bit of a role model for the other provinces that are going for the grand projects. Some of those provinces are really trying to focus on those restoring basic infrastructure and upgrading health, education. So we need to sort of try and rationalize the governance system and the government system. We've multiplied the layers of government, got national government, provincial government, districts, got the LLGs. Now we're putting funds out, although we haven't done so yet, to the wards. We need to sort of make sure that they're cooperating and understand their roles. Districts are part of provinces. They shouldn't be just going off independently and doing their own thing. They need to be coordinating with the provinces. All these are going to be challenges for the national government, as well as, obviously, holding his team together. But he does have a pretty potentially reasonably smooth run right through to the next election. I think he will have an 18-month secure period when there can't be a vote of no confidence against him. He has 1 year before the next election, again with no possible vote of no confidence. I think there's just a few months interval in the middle where they could, but by and large, if he's playing his hand well, then he should have a reasonable period. So he shouldn't be having to just play, or he can play to the wider gallery, but he shouldn't be playing to individual factions within there.
I'm Leah Gerari in Lorengau, and you're watching Business PNG.
To be an investor in PNG, these are the rules that we want to abide by.
Mr. Barker shared the same sentiments as Prime Minister Marape, stating that while the newly reshuffled government shouldn't undermine existing resource projects and project developers, they must be selective of future developers and make sure they adhere to PNG's conditions.
What PNG, and I imagine that the government will be wanting to do, is to really be able to be selective. It wants to be able to say, look, you come to the PNG to be an investor in PNG. These are the rules that we want to abide by. These are the sort of investment conditions, whether you're in small to medium enterprises, not so much small, but medium and larger enterprises, including in the extraction enterprises. But we'd like also to see you involved in more downstream processing and value adding within Papua New Guinea, including in the obviously the agricultural and the forestry and fisheries areas, and to make sure that we're seeing a number of investors, and particularly these are in the smaller investors, but some of them are not so small. We've seen this takeover of a lot of micro and small enterprises, including right out into the rural areas, by businesses that are not, frankly, paying tax. They're not paying GST. They're not paying minimum wages and abiding by a lot of the other rules, and clearly if just sending their money, remitting their money back to their home province in wherever it is overseas. And clearly the government needs to sort of embrace them to make sure that they are contributing in a fair way. And so it's not just those big extractive companies, it's the smaller enterprises as well. Because if we don't embrace them, then they'll clearly squeeze out the other investors who are paying tax, because their costs of business, their cost of trading are obviously higher, because they're also having to pay taxes, minimum wages and so on. Those businesses that are avoiding that and are maybe avoiding customs duty when they're bringing in goods and services, maybe through a logging port or through a tax-free mining operator, we have to stamp out on that to be able to get revenue, but also to make sure that there's a proper level and competitive playing field for business in the country, including for Papua New Guinean businesses.
Another item that Baka believes should be in Prime Minister Marape's agenda is the establishment of an independent commission against corruption. In an op-ed in the Dev Policy blog, former chairman of the now defunct Anti-Corruption Board Task Force Sweep, Sam Coim, expressed that corruption and bureaucracy are the two main development challenges, and by addressing these two issues, Prime Minister Marape and his cabinet will be able to effectively address other challenges.
So there's a major issue, and clearly one of the issues that a lot of the public have been concerned about over recent time relates to governance and corruption and the manipulation of systems. Forestry probably was the area where corruption came in a big way. First of all, it's interesting, back in 1984 when the INA, the Institute of National Affairs, jointly with NRI, or IASA at the time, did a study called the Clifford Report on Law and Order. It indicated in 1984 that although corruption did exist, it wasn't a serious issue. Clearly, since then, we've seen it become a very serious issue, manipulating decision-making, but also manipulating a lot of public procurement and adding to the cost of and diverting public funds away from priorities into overpriced contracts and a range of other issues. And of course, as I say, forestry was one of the first in the areas where grand-scale corruption seemed to be occurring. But it has, as a former Prime Minister, Sir Macquarie, has said, it became systematic and systemic. And we've got to make sure it's not that anymore, and it's up to the state watchdogs to be restored, to get that ICAC up and running, which has been long promised. It was promised by the new government in 2012, but we haven't actually seen anything much more than intentions. We need to actually see practice. But it's got to be a full ICAC, not a watered-down ICAC, not an ICAC which cannot select its own cases or cannot prosecute it as a backup if needs be. So it's got to have that authority, and it's got to have resources. Otherwise, there's no point in having it. You certainly want to reinforce the capability of the other law and justice institutions and make sure they're working collaboratively together. So it obviously includes the police. The police needs to have that greater independence, not be being directed in its actions, and also customs and the Ombudsman Commission, the other watchdogs, but also the civil society watchdogs. And those include, obviously, NGOs like Transparency International, but also we know that who has got the biggest reach around the country? It's the churches. So when the churches say the right things, and we've sometimes over the course of time heard the churches giving a strong anti-corruption message, that gets heard across the whole country. And they have been, some of the churches have been becoming more vocal again more recently, I would say, as their level of frustration has grown, and as they've seen the real challenges at the local area, in their local diocese and their local parishes, in terms of the lives of ordinary people.
Only time can tell what the country is headed towards under the helm of its new choir master.
I'm Leon Gerari in Brisbane, and you're watching Business PNG. Welcome back. Now we'll look at some news stories making headlines across the nation.
Prime Minister and
Whilst the attention of most Papua New Guineans were on political developments in Port Moresby, for people in 6 wards within Wewak district, the week ended on a high with more than 3,000 certified as financially literate. After completing a training program facilitated by the Microfinance Expansion Project, people within Wewak Urban, Wewak Rural, Wewak Island, Turubu, Boykin and Dagoa local level governments were given the opportunity to understand more about banking products and also gain access to financial services. Representatives from MEP's key stakeholders were present for the event.
Financial education by Hobim Tinting, how managing funds by lookout now pregnant now behind time too. So you must look like this.
The training conducted is part of an overall project designed to increase financial inclusion in Papua New Guinea by improving people's knowledge of and access to financial services. This has been done by providing financial literacy education to more than 215,000 people to date, 48% of whom are women.
It is pleasing to note that more than 3,000 of you in Wewak alone will graduate today. All of you, including the many women who participated, will now have enhanced knowledge to use your money very wisely.
The ECPIC Provincial Administration was also present, with Deputy Administrator Lynette Sari acknowledging support from partner financial institutions in rolling out suitable financial services for women and people in rural areas.
Now, thank you through that MIPLA long Wewak District 6 LG MIPLA fortunate logat la training logi MIPLA sawe lokim savings na budgeting bla MIPLA no life bla MIPLA that the benefit lo livelihood bla MIPLA time MIPLA staff lo all respective all areas bla MIPLA.
And what would be one of the biggest things that you find, or the biggest challenges in the country at the moment? Is it foreign imports? What is it?
Well, the biggest challenge at the moment is the influx of foreign goods that you see on the shelves every day. And I physically encountered many throughout the provinces. At one stage, I went into one of the provinces and I encountered punches and I almost got arrested by police. Wow. So that's the extreme I went as far as a CEO can do. So what requires is all of government approach in terms of acting, we're working together to eradicate the influx of foreign products that are considered to be, you name it.
Yeah. Right, Mr. Hein, recently there's been an increase in the retail price of diesel, kerosene, and petrol. Are you able to explain to our viewers the cause of that, as well as the Prices Regulation Act of refined petroleum products?
Well, thank you very much, Peter. I think this is a very important question that has been emerging several times in all forums, including the mainline media. Fuel price at this stage is we price takers, whilst we have the refinery at Napa Napa. The pricing arrangement we have at the moment is priced against Singapore. We call it IPP, Independent Power Producer. Mm-hmm. The crude are coming from Kumul Terminal, landed at Napa Napa Refinery, but the pricing is priced towards Singapore. You're saying that the crudes are brought in from Singapore and priced this against this one. So in actual fact, these are prices that we've been locked into a project agreement in 1997 or some years back. Mm-hmm. So we are stuck for the next 30 years.
Oh, no.
We cannot change, we cannot amend. We've tried, when I was a technical officer, we tried several times. So the amendments has to go through a consensus between the project, all the parties. Yeah. So I think for me personally, I was involved in 3 or 4 times and we haven't successfully achieved it. So at the moment, the price, ICCC, what it does is the prices are given by Puma to us on the 8th of, we cross-check with the international benchmarks, and then when we see that they agree, we make that announcement. So in actual fact, Papua New Guineans have no choice.
We don't have a say?
We don't have a say because it's already locked into this project agreement that we are now going to continue to rely for the next 30 years.
Jufa's speech in Parliament caught the attention of many.
I have traveled districts and stations and they're crumbling and dying as I speak. They are not what they used to be. Many thriving economic hubs, but today they are dilapidated and crumbling and overgrown with elephant grass. And our people are now drifting to towns to seek a better life. We have to find a way to send them back home. And they will go back home if we build those districts and stations for them.
The concerns he raised were some of the challenges ordinary Papua New Guineans face every day, especially the increase in taxes charged on almost every goods and services.
Our people are overtaxed. We pay the highest tax in the region, 35% on income. It's too much. I would propose at this instance that we remove taxes on resignations and on retirement and on retrenchment benefits from our public servants and our Papua New Guinean workers. They don't need to pay these taxes. They live in the richest country in the world. Meanwhile, we have given too much tax exemptions and tax holidays to all types of criminal cartels and pirates that have come here to enrich themselves at our cost.
Showing support towards Marape as Prime Minister-elect, Jufa pointed out certain laws that need to be changed in favor of Papua New Guinea.
We must devise the laws that belong to us, our laws. The current laws that we work under are not our laws. They are colonial laws. They are colonial laws devised, developed for the benefit of others. We must devise our laws for the benefit of ourselves.
Another interesting point Jufa made was for Marape to have the trust in members of parliament that he will appoint to head the different portfolios.
Dear Prime Minister, you have a mix of young men and wisdom. Use them both. Let us not cast out our elders. Let us not say that we have forgotten them. That is not Melanesia. Let us remember them. They have wisdom. They have gained much experience along the way. Do not forget your young men. They too are leaders. They were elected by their people to represent them. Your backbenchers, not everyone is going to have a ministry, but allocate. Parliamentary committees are the important and vital bread and butter work of Parliament. They must be revived, funded, so that they can also do what they are supposed to be doing.
Papua New Guinea has huge potential in the coming years to become a major tourism hub. From research conducted by International Finance Corporation, PNG TPA, and the New Zealand Tourism Research Institute, the country received over 94,000 visitors in 2018, which is a 9.5% increase from 2017.
The top three sectors benefiting from tourism continue to include accommodation, airfare, food and beverage.
However, while arrivals have grown, the average spend for every trip has decreased, in which safety, security, and infrastructure are still major concerns.
Tours, domestic travel and local transport saw slight decreases in total earning. Again, this could be linked to a higher number of business travelers who have come to PNG for APAC and who did not travel to provinces or spend on tours.
Holiday visitors have increased, which indicates that PNG is closing the gap and getting closer to the global average holiday market of 53% of total visitors, in which Australians remain PNG's highest holiday visitors. Through the data provided from the survey, PNG TPA will continue to help service providers build the industry.
Because the details of the information are very relevant to most of our industry members, especially within the tourism and hospitality sectors. It shows how the tourists are coming into Papua New Guinea. All these detailed information are very useful to to the tourism industry members and also other stakeholders.
This data covers international visitors that traveled for the purposes of business, holiday, visiting friends and relatives, sports, and education. However, it did not include cruise visitors or those that are in country for employment purposes.
And that's all we have for this episode of Business PNG. For more information, or if you'd simply like to view this episode again, visit EMTV online at the URL at the bottom of your screen. Or to simply join the conversation, like our page on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at the Twitter handle at Business PNG. Until next week, have a pleasant evening. I'm Leanne Jarari, and this was Business PNG.